Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Heroes Welcome from Pencil First Games. Heroes Welcome is a 2 to 5 player worker movement kind of game. It's not really worker placement, but you'll see what I mean as I go through this. The general theme of the game is you are controlling a team of adventurers, these heroes over here, who are going to be wandering around the map as you play, trying to take various actions separately. You are playing competitively in this game despite cooperatively controlling that character, and the general goal is to try to figure out the best ways to arm those adventurers so that when they go ahead and enter the dungeon again, they can go ahead and kill all the various baddies along the way. To that end, you're kind of playing both sides of the teams here. You are supplying the various baddies who will then be in the dungeon and trying to attack the heroes. Meanwhile, the heroes will then go ahead and kill them, and you're going to have this cycle of the heroes leveling up, getting stronger, being able to afford more and give you more and get more, all while you try to survive across the course of play until eventually all the big bad villains, I guess, are destroyed in this game. Meanwhile, your goal is to get the most money along the way while you try to manage this playing both sides. I think you're basically playing both sides in the game. To that end, on your turn, you're going to do one of four things. You're going to go through a cycle of taking actions and then resolving the heroes killing the baddies. Again, the heroes not being you, which is slightly confusing, but the actions you can take in the game are as follows. First of all, and I'd say most commonly, you're going to be moving the heroes around the board, taking an action at their adjacent location. So you might move to that location, do the action there. In this case, you'll pay a money to a villain, to a hero over here, to take an item from them. They actually should have some starting items on them. Let's go ahead and just put a few items on them so you see what I mean over here. But you can go ahead and pay a money to a hero in order to take their item. So you pay money, you put it into their pool, you take that item, and now you can benefit from that item. That's going to be important because you're going to be taking these items and using them to sell to the villains. Again, the back and forth aspect. When you grab that item, it's on the material side. When you go ahead and sell it, you'll be on the other side, or actually vice versa. You get the headband of hair control, and then you break it down to mithril so you can craft something and sell it to the villains. That's the process, although crafting is just flipping it. There's no real process there. So that's going to be the actions you take. You move the heroes around, you take the actions on location, so the next person can go ahead, now that the hero's over here, they can move the heroes over here and take that item. They can move the heroes over here and take that item. This one over here is going to be supplying each of the heroes with a potion. Let's go ahead and do that over there, and then you get a money from the heroes. You can go ahead and take the money from the heroes. Nice little action, because you're not really supplying the potions, the board's supplying those potions. It's the tonic pond, not to be confused with the toxic pond over there. You'll get the money over there, and you'll be able to use that as you go around. Now, as you take these actions, you're going to be taking these little closed signs and putting them on the various locations in the game. So various spots on the board are going to be closed up as the heroes wander around, which eventually starts to put a little bit of a management puzzle of exactly where the heroes can go next. So when you move the heroes, you're thinking both through what you want, but also how things will play out as the heroes will continue to move. Now, there's a few other things you can do in the game. The next most common action, in my opinion, is going to be activating one of the guilds. There's a bunch of guilds around the edges of the board, and these guilds will give you actions that you don't have to move the heroes to, you still have to mark them as closed. So I can go to the Merchants Guild and draw 2 scam cards, which are basically ability cards you can play for a variety of benefits, anything from going to closed locations, taking extra actions, whatever, all different kind of benefits on those cards. You can go to the Minstrels Guild to discard resources and move the heroes to any open shop and immediately run it. You go to the Artisans Guild to gain a mastery of your choice or upgrade a mastery. Basically, in the game, you have different masteries. So, for example, let's say we want to have red shard mastery. When we craft things with multiple red shards, we'll get extra points in the game and also have cool titles to our items. So we're not just crafting a flaming axe of vengeance. We're crafting a spiteful flaming vengeful axe. Actually, that's all 3 of them. But you can get the idea. You throw these fancy names onto your items because fancy names means things are worth more points and more money in the game. So you can upgrade your masteries by going to the Artisans Guild. You also have the Thieves Guild, which you can visit the black market, another way to get various resources. You can go to the Goldsmiths Guild to get money from the bank and then pay points to get more money, or you can go to the Builders Guild to build a shop or upgrade a shop on the board and then take another turn. So when you build a shop, you're going to be placing onto various locations on the board, and you can also use it to upgrade them. Some things have specific types of items they go on top of. So example, we can see over here that, over here, this item goes on a field or on the Provisioner. The Emporium only goes on the Peddler. So over here, that Peddler could be replaced by this Emporium over here, and then you can go ahead and activate that location. So you're building out the town, you're upgrading the town, providing more and better actions as you do so by taking that Builders Guild action. The third action you can take is actually supplying the various villains in the game. You see, you're going to start with a pool of villains over here, and they have little numbers in them. They're coming up procedurally as you play, but you have the Troglodyte, and the Orc Archer, and the Reanimated Corpse, and the Demon Imp, and they all have requirements of what they want as far as the items they need to go ahead and get them the shiv that he wants, and also the points and money that they'll reward you here. The Reanimated Corpse wants a hook, but you have to provide those items, and then points and money. All of the various people who want items that you're supplying, these are going to be characters that want various configurations of items. They will give you points and money in exchange, and then from there you're going to take one of these tokens and toss it into the dungeon, where you're going to reveal exactly what showed up in the dungeon as far as how it's going to, well, let's go ahead and walk through that shortly. The last action you can take in the game is you can go ahead and pass, or more specifically, you can call for an end to the round. When you call for an end to the round, a player can go ahead and pay you a resource to stop the round from ending. They can do so once. The second time you call for an end to the round will end, and so you have that kind of last minute, okay, well, someone just said the round's over, do I care, am I okay with that, or do I want to pay them a resource because it's worth that resource to me to have the game continue for another round, to have the round continue for another turn. When you're done with that, when the round does eventually come to an end, you're going to go through this phase over here where you take the heroes, and you go through this phase over here where you're going to go ahead, return 2 black marker tokens to the person who triggered the end game, is going to return 2 of these to the bag and draw a scam card. Then you kill all enemies and level up. Leveling up means you flip over the tokens of the various enemies you supplied, and you put a token on that person that's going to power them up throughout the course of the game. Then you collect 1 loot per hero level. The more powerful the heroes are, the more loot they gather, which means the more money they're going to gather, the more of a prospect they're going to be when they enter the town phase. Then you open shops guilds, basically take these various signs off the locations to clear out the board. If there's 3 or fewer customers, you draw 3 more cards. So you can have a bunch of customers. If there's still 4 customers on the board, it is what it is. But if you have 3 or fewer, you're going to draw 3 more customers, loading them up over here until eventually you get all the way to the end over here, where you have Smiteros over here is going to be the last boss. That's going to trigger the end game. Crafting 10 different items or 8 different items for him is going to be, well, 8 different things to craft the legendary weapon, getting 10 points. That will trigger the end game round. Then over here we have Expand the Town, which is where you're going to grab a token from the top of the building stack and expand the town on its own without you doing so, pass the Master Merchant, return to town, and repeat that cycle until eventually you take down Smiteros. One more thing we didn't cover yet is we do have your player starting sheet over here. These are going to have a few things like player rate stuff in the back, but also the character you have, their starting perks, small little boons they have, what they start with, 2 scam cards, the mastery, the starting doodad, the amount of money they start with, all those small little things, as well as their title. Because when you do that Flaming Vengeful Sword of Burning, it's actually Mordecai's Flaming Vengeful Sword of Burning, or whatever it is. But that is basically how you play Heroes Welcome. You're going through phases, cooperatively controlling the heroes in this competitive experience. It's not semi-co-op, it's not cooperative. You just happen to be controlling this shared guy as he walks around the board, but you are ultimately trying to do your own thing, gather the most money, be those little goblin merchants in the background who are trying to get as much money while they play both sides of the fence in the game Heroes Welcome. Which brings us to a review starting off with ease of play. Rulebook's fairly easy to get into. This is a fairly straightforward game, very easy to understand, very quick, overall just an easy game to set up and get running, not a lot of complexity behind it. The game does run a little on the longer side, I'd say around 90 minutes, box says 90 minutes, I'd say around 90 minutes for the game as far as how long it goes. It's not a shorter game. It feels like it should be a little shorter, but we'll talk about that as far as things I like, don't like, and can see others not liking. Speaking of which, let's start off with things I like, which is the game is super charming. When you dive into this game, this is a fun little game of controlling heroes while you play both sides, you supply them various goods. Overall, both in terms of the art, the presentation, the theme, it is a charming game. You're watching the town build up around you as you play. You're supplying the heroes, you're moving them around the board, you're cooperatively helping them level up as they take down all these people who you've also been supplying as you play through the game. The theme, art, presentation, all across the board is charming. The titles and the mastery are a fun little thing to add as well. Having that little aspect of, Mordecai's flaming sword of vengeance burning and all that stuff, as well as the masteries that actually give you points for diving into those masteries. And you can have a few masteries. Usually there's not that much point having too many of them because they start overlapping and getting each other's way, but leveling up a mastery to the top level and possibly having a second one can give you a lot of fun as far as the ways you're going to try to get those extra points to push yourself ahead of the game. You're also going to be upgrading the town and upgrading the buildings, and you get to choose which buildings to upgrade, where they're going to go, and how they're going to feed into the strategy you're pursuing, and you will have some fun turns as a result. You're going to be playing some powerful scam cards at the right time while you upgrade your masteries, while you go to that one location where you can go ahead and get 15 gold from the heroes because of the exact combination. There are fun turns to be had in this game where you do the powerful thing because you set yourself up in the right way as you play through it. As far as things I don't like in the game, first of all, speaking of setting yourself up as you play through it, one of the problems is because you're controlling this shared character, it's not about planning out your sequence of moves to the town. Sometimes you're like, well, I really want to go here because it's going to be a really good spot to go over this location, but if I move close to that, then someone else can take that move instead. I found in general, whenever you're working with a shared controlled pool, there is that risk aspect of, can you really set yourself up, or is it just a game of chicken? And sometimes in the game, it is a game of chicken because of that shared character. It's charming, to be sure, but it has I would say, a negative gameplay impact as far as the strategy, because it ends up being a game of chicken sometimes for that ideal location that's really going to help you. There are things you can do around it. You can go ahead and visit the Minstrel's Guild to discard an item to move anywhere. There's things you can do, but it can sometimes turn into a game of chicken. I'll also say, like I said already, the game is a little repetitive for a game that lasts 90 minutes. This game to me feels like it should have been a 45-minute long experience. It is entry weight in terms of the weight class of what the game is. The game is on the lighter side. Another factor as far as my personal enjoyment of it. I think the game is charming. I think the game has a lot of accessibility to it. But all those things kind of pull together to be a game that for me should have been a 45-minute long experience and is twice that. It's 90 minutes when you play this, and it overstays its welcome as you go through it. I like Heroes Welcome. I find it fun. I find it charming. I find it a simple, good, solid, entry-level worker placement game that runs about twice as long as I want it to actually run. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, that shared worker aspect I kind of touched upon already, but also the game itself is also going to be very procedural in terms of the enemies that are coming out. You're going to have these enemies coming out in an exact order every single time, and then going through that dungeon where they're all just leveling up. A lot of elements of the game that feel like they could have been more random or more interesting are more pre-scripted, which lends itself nicely to that entry-level aspect, but the entry-level combined with the long playtime, again, that little dichotomy there. As far as final thoughts on Heroes Welcome, I think I've covered most of it by now. I like the game to an extent, meaning I find the game well done in terms of the theme, the presentation, the accessibility, the entry level. It is a good gateway game, sort of. Where it loses me at good gateway is the fact that I don't think the game is interesting enough to be worth that 90-minute long experience, and I think the game is too long to be a gateway experience. So it kind of falls into that middle zone of being neither for me. It's not a game I would immediately recommend as a gateway game because it's longer than what I think of as being gateway friendly, and it's definitely not enough strategic depth behind it to either recommend in that side. So I'm left in a weird place with it. I both enjoyed my time with it. I do think it does things well, but I also find myself, I guess recommendation-wise, I'd recommend this game if you are looking for a good gateway game and you know that this might run longer than what you're looking for in that genre. So I enjoy it, with critiques and complaints. Overall, for me, it's a 3 out of 5. A lot of promising aspects, some things that get in the way. Overall, still a fun experience, but not necessarily one that I'd immediately pick to recommend. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Bargain Quest. If you're looking for something with a very similar theme, Bargain Quest is another game that does the same thing. Full transparency, Bargain Quest is not a game I enjoyed that much either, but they are very much in the same genre and category, and it does have a lot of fans. It's another game where you're kind of supplying the heroes as opposed to actually being the hero, which is always an interesting take on the genre. And then secondly, if you're looking for a good gateway game that is very charming, very interesting, about the same weight class, but I think keeps things more variable to keep you engaged throughout the experience, Almanac the Dragon Road or Almanac the Crystal Peaks are both two games that give you a kind of worker placement with a storybook that you are exploring as you go through it that does run also a little long, but gives you a lot more variability to the experience to keep you engaged throughout it. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.